welcome to this interview, Carsten. It's very exciting to have you here. As the CEO and founder of BARC, you've got some very exciting news for us, which is that you've just conducted a survey on data sovereignty. So do you mind just sharing a little bit about that process? And then we'll dive into some questions I have regarding them.
Absolutely. Rebecca, thanks for having me. And obviously, I'm very happy to speak about our latest research we did at BARC. We find that this topic, data sovereignty, is very hot right now. Wherever you go, even in private life, people are talking about, it's basically driven by US politics. That's really the driver. And there's definitely an increased uncertainty. What's going on, how the future will look like. Things that we took for granted are not for granted anymore. So this also obviously affects now the usage of US-based hyperscalers. But our study also found that it's not only the geopolitical situation, but it's also the increasing regulation, especially also here in Europe, from the European Union, that is also putting this topic of data sovereignty very high on the agenda. And that's why we conducted this survey, and very quickly, actually, we got 300 responses. So 300 companies responded. It was a short survey, just 6 questions, so it took just a short amount of time. But I think the results were super interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And so why do you think data sovereignty has transitioned from a compliance requirement to a core business priority in 2025?
Yeah, it used to be more a topic like very general. Yeah, so if data is stored in the EU, who would have access to it, and what would you have to do with it, and things like that. And now it's became very concrete for companies. And the key topic here is that it's very obvious that most companies are very dependent on US hyperscalers. So most of the data, if it's in the cloud, and that's an increasing amount, is typically stored with Microsoft Azure or Google or Amazon AWS. And now the questions arise, what happens actually if we cannot access the data anymore, or if there might be like a delay, or we don't get the latest features in these platforms, and so on. So I think this is why it became very concrete.
The recent survey you've conducted has found that a staggering 84% now see sovereignty as strategic. Was there anything that surprised you about the responses contained within the survey?
Yeah, so first of all, the statement was very strong. As you said, 84%, that's an important topic to us. And if we look around, maybe that wasn't a big surprise. But we asked then, how did it change over the last 1 to 2 years? And here 70% said it has increased in relevance. So we can clearly see that this topic has really gained now in importance. And I think that was one of the interesting results. There are a few more, like the question, so what measures did you take? So how did you react now to this increased importance of data sovereignty? And here I thought was quite interesting to see that a lot of companies are now enforcing or looking more closely at a hybrid cloud strategy. But there are also other things that companies are doing. So they are also looking or turning more towards local or regional cloud providers, which I think is interesting. So they look to where is my data hosted? And some, 19% even said they would basically force or strengthen their on-premises strategy, which I thought is super interesting because we are now maybe into 10 years of cloud first or moving or migrating into the cloud. So that was quite interesting that companies say, well, maybe we should stay on premises.
So how do these geopolitical tensions, and especially with the evolving EU regulations, shape this urgency around sovereignty, especially in the DACH region? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing is that we have this regulation that's one after the other is coming into effect now. So there's the EU Data Act. And for the public bodies, there's the Data Governance Act. There's NIS2. There's still the GDPR rules that are still affecting everything. So there's now the AI Act, also to mention that, because that also has an effect on data, obviously, because without data, there's no AI. And so all this is coming into effect, and that for sure influences this. Yeah, that the data sovereignty sometimes is now enforced by law, or there's regulation around it. So that's one side. And the other side surely is the political development in the US, where things really became now uncertain, and the big dependency on US software companies and cloud providers became very clear that this might be a problem. At least there's a risk to it now, and before nobody really cared, and now there is a risk. To put it in numbers, we saw that 69% said that the new legal requirements are or have influenced the importance of data sovereignty, and 46% said the political developments in the USA have or led to that increased importance.
You have all this regulation coming out and people having to stay quite stringent to them. Is there a way that organizations can balance that innovation, especially what comes with AI, with the need to secure proprietary data sets? Do you think this is a trade-off? We have to have one more than the other? What do you feel is the answer to that?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, definitely companies are looking now more closely on this topic of data sovereignty. And when we ask them, how do you want to tackle, or how do you want to strengthen data sovereignty, then about half of them said, yeah, we want to strengthen this hybrid strategy, which means basically I think they are now more careful what goes into a public cloud, what goes into a private cloud. And so I think this whole idea of private cloud is now of increased interest and importance, because I would say that most data already has been moved to the cloud. And going back to on-premises system, I think very often that's simply not an option. It's just the data centers are not there anymore. And so what can you do if you want to basically balance your risk a little bit? And that's, I think then the private cloud options can be quite interesting. And to combine that with the use of a regional or local cloud provider, I think that's the thing that many companies are looking into that, because another third of our responses said, 36% to be exact, that they want to increasingly use regional or local cloud providers. So running with a local cloud instance on a local provider, I think that already increases the control you have over where your data is. The downside here is that pretty often it still would be let's say, US software that runs on this, or that basically sets up this private cloud. So I think that's another issue to look at. But it looks like from the survey data we have that this combination of a hybrid strategy, strengthening private cloud, plus using regional or local cloud providers, that seems to be the main response that companies are looking at.
And so you were saying about people going to certain companies, especially local ones. But is there any advice you would give for enterprises that are looking to, shop around, but they have a fear of vendor lock-in? Is there any advice that you can offer them for things to watch out for while aiming for more sovereignty?
Yeah, I mean, if you're already locked in, then it's a problem for sure. So typically it's really more forward-looking. It's I think one advice is very simple. Wherever you put your data, please don't only look at the cost and restrictions around how data is moved there and how data is stored there and what cost you have when you use it. while it's stored there, but also take a look what happens when you want to move the data out of that system. Yeah, when you move on, because there are some providers that actually have pretty hefty fees, yeah, when you export data or when you basically move the data off the platform again, which many companies didn't really look at upfront, yeah, because that wasn't their problem at that time. They wanted to move data on that platform, not off. So that's maybe one advice. The other is definitely look for open formats, open APIs, yeah, so that interoperability really is technically supported. And there's maybe one small piece, but very interesting. There is a new open source table format coming out, or there are several now on the market, but that is gaining rapidly in interest and implementation because it exactly does that. It helps you to stay independent from certain data platforms. So it's called Apache Iceberg, or there's a format called Delta. Those are the two leading ones. And what it does to you is basically you store the data in an open table format, and then the data platform or query engine of your choice basically can pick it up, but you can also change that. And with that, I think it's quite helpful going forward to take a look at that. Maybe think about your next data lakehouse installation, for example, or implementation, yeah, to also use these open table formats to increase this possibility to move to change systems and move data from one to the other.
I mean, that's really great actionable insights that you've given enterprises there. And so in the survey, there's also the skills shortages and a regulatory complexity came through strongly as challenges. People, having this capacity to learn so much in such a short amount of time, also understanding the kind of nuances that come through when it comes to regulation. So how are the best leaders overcoming these, would you say? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, truly investing. Yeah, I mean, that's the pain point here. Yeah. We have to invest in data being a crucial competitive factor and a true asset for companies already now, but definitely in the future. You ask about AI. Yeah, I mean, AI, and most companies see that now, is that they can only move ahead with AI use cases and overall with their AI strategy when they get their data in order, yeah? When they actually make it accessible, have the quality right, and so on. And all that takes investments. And that, I think, is the primary topic here. So both missing personal resources, 45% said that, and lack of internal expertise, almost 40% said that these are the two biggest challenges they have. And both can be overcome with investments, both in basically getting more people in, hiring more people, and also educating people, because we all know there is a skills shortage, especially in these crucial data fields. But obviously one is, try to be attractive as employer, try to hire people, try to always look at data skills when you hire for whatever position in the company, because data skills will be more important in the future anyway. And on the other hand, probably it's safe to say that we will have continued problems to find enough talent, to find enough good people for all the data and AI topics we have in organizations. So continuous education, building up the expertise and the skills internally with the workforce you have is also another, I think, very important part also of a data strategy, to look after the resources and the skills.
Yeah, I agree. And, what did the survey say about the cross-functional collaboration between IT, legal, and business teams? Is it improving, or is there still a weakness there?
Actually, we didn't really ask that question.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry. So it's actually our advice, that there should be more cross-functional collaboration, because if you treat that all in silos, it's not really something. If you think about data sovereignty, that's really helpful here. But for data sovereignty, we have several topics. Yeah, we need IT know-how. We need to understand what systems do we have, what cloud providers, how can we move data, and so on. But we also need this security knowledge, because we didn't touch on that topic, by the way, yet. But cybersecurity and security incidents are also driving data sovereignty considerations, because data has to be safe, obviously, yeah, shielded from outside illegal access, and that's also part of sovereignty. But for that, we need security expertise, which is sometimes bundled under a chief security officer or some security people. And then we need to have legal understandings. Yeah, what can we do with data? There are certain requirements on data. Especially the ones that, or the personal data. Yeah, so any data that's is linked to natural people, to people. So yeah, all this has to come together to understand how can I treat data, how should I treat data, and how can I approach data sovereignty then?
God, there's lots of moving parts, aren't there? And I guess that a lot of companies find it a bit of a struggle to kind of make sense of the noise of it. And so are there anything common misconceptions that you would like to clear up about what organizations think data sovereignty really is?
I think now with the latest discussion, I think most have a pretty clear view on that. So I think the importance has risen. Companies are looking into it. I think what the question is really, okay, but what can we do? Yeah, so how can we improve that? Because just moving off, for example, from cloud systems, it's not an option. It's not really realistic to do that. So my recommendation is actually to classify the data you have. So maybe start with an inventory that includes a classification, but also understand where data is, in what systems. Yeah? And often companies have a wide variety, and it often is a very heterogeneous in terms of technical systems, yeah, what providers and where they are. But now under this risk assessment, that's new, or became more important. Now under this risk assessment, yeah, it became clearer that we have to understand where it is, where physically, but also what provider it is, what guarantees do we have, what are they basically, what conditions do we have, how can we access the data, what could happen. So we also have to run like risk scenarios. Yeah, if something unforeseen happens, do we have a backup? Yeah, where is that? And so on. So there are many, I think, different things to consider. But the starting point surely is to understand the situation. Yeah? What data do you have? Where is it? And classify it in terms of how critical it is on the one side to my business. On the other side, what regulation is there? Yeah, what do I have to obey? To also be very sure, yeah, what the legal requirements are.
Do you have any predictions, or looking ahead, what does the next generation, as it were, of sovereignty look like? And are we heading towards a more decentralization, or is it a tighter regulatory landscape, would you say?
Well, I mean, the regulatory landscape is there. I'm sure it will be added, but the discussion we see right now, at least here in the European Union, is to not over-regulate. Yeah? So I think the tendency right now in terms of regulation is rather to go back a little bit. We saw that in the supply chain regulation, and it's already under discussion in the EU AI Act. Yeah? So there is also some discussion going on whether that might have gone too far, yeah, whether we should relax it a little bit. So I think in the, let's say, near future, we will not see increased regulation from there, What is the challenge right now is actually that this regulation that is already there is now coming into effect. So companies will have to look at that. And I think that will definitely take up some resources and some time in the next years, yeah, to stay on top of that, to stay ahead with that and understand what's going to happen. That's one side of the thing. The other side, I think everyone is now rerunning their risk assessments. And what has been deemed very clear and not risky is now under reconsideration. And I think we will be, or I hope that companies will be more careful in the future and think about what risk they are exposed to in terms of what might happen if one of the providers basically is not delivering anymore, is not accessible anymore. Do I have a plan for that? Yeah? Do I have a backup maybe? Do I know what to do? That would be the least, I think, if this is happening. And basically there's some work to be done now to run these risk assessments because there's a new risk, which has not been really considered before, that even the big cloud providers, it could happen that they might be not accessible anymore, or that we don't get any updates for the software anymore, or that we get lower bandwidth for whatever reason or whatever, or that we simply have to come to the conclusion that the data is not secure there anymore in terms of who can access it. So a lot of new things to consider because we are in a new situation, as we all know. Yeah, the world has changed. The geopolitical landscape has changed quite significantly. And now we have to deal with the new situation.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, you'll be talking more about the results of the survey at Tech Show Frankfurt, which is less than 2 weeks away on the 4th and 5th of June. Do you mind just sharing a bit more about your session and what you can expect audiences to learn when they attend?
Absolutely. So I have the honor of doing the keynote, and I will definitely share the detailed results of this survey, so people that are interested in data sovereignty can get first-hand insights into the details. But I will also talk about two, I think, major and interesting developments in the market. One is on the AI side. We see this big shift and movement towards agentic AI. And I think this is super interesting because it puts AI more closely to the operational business processes. And with that, it's now easier to show the value of AI and also to scale it across the enterprise. And this is definitely necessary because we see AI as being a hype topic for some years now, but in some companies it's really in trouble in a way. Yeah, so we have these working prototypes, but now companies are struggling to scale it across the enterprise, for example. And agentic AI, as being the latest development here, I think can contribute greatly to that. On the other hand, we also have an interesting development on the data side. It is also helping to scale data across the enterprise, and that's the move towards data products. I presented on that already last year at last year's tech show, and that was one of the sessions that was really super well attended. So people are very curious to learn more about this concept of data products, and many companies already have picked it up. And the idea is behind it is to treat data a bit differently. So to have real data owners and to redefine who that actually could be and how we now share data across the enterprise. But only if we share data more easily and if it's more easily accessible across the enterprise, then we get more value out of data, and only then we can actually bring these AI use cases across the enterprise to full production and to be really valuable. So both trends are dependent in a way on each other, or or have some interdependencies. And for me, those are the two most interesting trends in terms of AI and data that help us to bring these concepts to real implementation, meaning also to become really valuable for enterprises.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Carsten. I've learned an awful lot, and I can't wait to hear those detailed results at Tech Show Frankfurt happening next month. So thank you again.
Thank you, Rebecca.